Hello, everybody. This is Bob Swain. I'm the preacher at the Aniana Church of Christ. Thanks for listening in. This is podcast number 4. I've been calling these little talks or podcasts things that are written aforetime. It's usually a Bible story with a twist. I try to use a tad of imagination, a little bit of artistic freedom while staying true to what the Bible teaches. And hopefully in every one of these podcasts or every one of these little talks, it will spur you, the listener, into having some spiritual thought, or maybe to go read the passage from which the story is taken, and hopefully learn the lesson that's intended for the day. Thanks for listening in. This is podcast number 4, and it is entitled, A Bad Day at Work. It was going to be a bad day at work. He could tell it right from the first moments. He had gotten there early, trying to make an impression for good because he felt like he needed to. The last employee to hold this position, whom he had replaced, had been let go under undesirable circumstances. So he was going to do this job to the best of his abilities so that he wouldn't meet a similar fate as his predecessor. It's hard starting a new job, learning all the routines, and all the faces and names can be overwhelming, and his new boss had a massive network. He seemed to be known by everyone, and people were constantly contacting him about one thing or another concerning his business or concerning their business. It was very obvious from the day he started that his new boss was a man of status. And on top of the fact that he was new, he was young. He didn't know if he was the youngest to hold his position, but being young did not bode in his favor. He felt as if he oozed of lack of experience, and he was right. And that lack of experience would show in just a short time right in front of the boss, too. And the boss would teach him a lesson that day, one that he would never forget for the rest of his life. And I suppose one that we would do well to remember as well after we hear this young man's story. It wasn't his status of being new to the job or his lack of experience that would make it a bad day at work. It was actually something completely out of his control. It was actually because of the business practices of his new boss. And he may have been new and very wet behind the ears, but he could still survey the scene and see the writing on the wall, so to speak, and he knew it was going to be a very bad day. When a person is successful, it brings with it many positive things, but it also brings many negatives. And on this very bad day at work, our young worker would have the water wiped from behind his ears by the towel of life experience. And he would watch as his boss handled what could only be described as a hostile takeover. And they don't call them hostile for no reason. It's because the whole process is not friendly at all. That's one of the negatives about being successful. People always wanting what you have, or in some way trying to stop you from being successful. Our young worker was about to be caught in the middle of a situation, and he couldn't see it, but life was getting the towel ready. Have you ever been in a situation like this young man? In a high-stress environment, and for whatever reason, there you are stuck in the middle of a conflict that you didn't start, but now you're a part of it? Tensions are rising, outcomes and compromises seem bleak, and there you are, stuck and ill-equipped to defuse the situation, and you really don't know what is the next step to make. We all have at one time or another. Maybe it wasn't at your work. Maybe it was family tension, or maybe it was some group that you're a part of. Things like this happen in Booster Club and in churches and even at kids' sporting events. And there you are in the middle of this tense situation, and so you act. And maybe you handled it wrong. Maybe you raised your voice in anger, or maybe you slinked back into the shadows, silently hoping it would all just go away, and maybe neither of those worked too well, so the situation stayed. That was where our young worker found himself, right in the middle of a situation where he didn't know what to do. He surveyed the scene and pretty quickly decided to do something because something needed to be done. And that is when the boss taught him our aforementioned life lesson. You know, the one we all can learn from. You see, what our young friend did was this. He went to the boss and he asked, "What should we do?" The boss then did something that many today would deem silly or pointless or even politically correct. He told him not to worry about the circumstances they were in. And then he did something that we can't even do over the public address systems at our football games anymore because people deem it politically incorrect. His boss prayed. The Bible says that the things written aforetime were written for our learning. And this young man's story can be read in 2 Kings chapter 6, verses 8 through 26. This is what the Bible says. Once when the king of Syria was warring against Israel, he took counsel with his servants, saying, "At such and such a place shall be my camp." But the man of God sent word to the king of Israel, "Beware that you do not pass this place, for the Syrians are going down there." And the king of Israel sent to the place about which the man of God told him. And thus he used this warning so that he saved himself there more than once or twice. And the mind of the king of Syria was greatly troubled because of this thing, and he called his servants and said to them, "Will you not show me who of us is for the king of Israel?" And one of his servants said, "None, my lord, O king, but Elisha, the prophet who's in Israel, tells the king of Israel the words that you speak in your bedroom." And he said, "Go and see where he is, that I may send and seize him." And it was told him, "Behold, he's in Dothan." So he sent their horses and chariots and a great army, and they came by night and surrounded the city. And when the servant of the man of God rose early in the morning and went out, behold, an army with horses and chariots was all around the city. And the servant said, "Alas, my master, what shall we do?" He said, "Do not be afraid, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them." And Elisha prayed and said, "O Lord, please open his eyes that he may see." So the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw. And behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. And when the Syrians came down against him, Elisha prayed to the Lord, "Please strike this people with blindness." So he struck them with blindness in accordance with the prayer of Elisha. And Elisha said to them, "This is not the way, and this is not the city. Follow me, and I will bring you to the man whom you seek." And he led them to Samaria. If you read the next few verses, you see that he led them straight to the king of Israel. When they got their sight back, rather than strike them down, the king of Israel, on the advice of Elisha, fed them and sent them on their way. And the Bible tells us that the Syrians never again raided in the land of Israel. When Elisha's servant went out that morning and saw the king of Syria had sent his army to the town they lived in to take Elisha by force, panic struck his heart, and he asked Elisha what they should do. His response? Oh, it was epic. "Those who are with us are more than those who are with them." And then prayed the young man's eyes be opened that he could see the chariots of fire that had the Syrians surrounded. The lesson our young friend learned that day was not to pray in difficult times, though that would have been a great lesson. What he learned that day was that God's team is always bigger than the team of the enemy. And he learned that what started out as a bad day at work can become a good day if we open our eyes to what God has planned. God delivered Elisha and his household that day, and he can still deliver us today, no matter how bad the odds seem stacked against us. Too many times we go about the daily grind of life with our eyes closed to what God has in store. Perhaps we would do well to learn from the young boy who served Elisha. When the woes of the world seem to have you surrounded, it might be a good idea to pause, say a prayer for help, and lift up your eyes to the hills, because those that are with us are always more than those that are with them. Our God can surround any trial, any foe, any problem, and deliver us in a way he sees fit. It may be in the form of a way of escape. It may be strength for the battle that we must fight. It may be extra troops in the forms of friend and family. His ways are not our ways, but we simply must be looking for how our God plans to help his own, because he always has, and he always will. Thanks for listening, everybody. Hope you have a wonderful day.